knowing how to stay true to yourself. That is like the baseline of literally everything. Even though that's not the first rule, that is something that is the most important out of all of them. Because if you don't stay true to yourself, how are you going to be able to respect yourself? How are you going to be able to respect other people? If you don't know who you are and you don't stay true to it, how are you going to know all of this other stuff? How are you going to love yourself? Like, it doesn't make sense. When you're around other people, if you're not yourself, how can you know how to respond to certain situations? So that's like the most important thing that I would say, in being a big boss.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Unleash Your Greatness, and I am again super excited for this one and really excited for this interview that we're doing today. We have a amazing two people on, Haelee and her father, Dedrick Moone. And Haelee is 13 years old and she is amazing. So she is the author of The Rules of a Big Boss, a book that she has written. And her father and her, and that is a book about self-love and overcoming some things that she's overcome in her life, which we're going to talk about. And then her father and her are also co-authoring a new book coming out soon called The Unlikely Journey, Fire and Gold. So I want to welcome them. Welcome, Haelee and Dedrick. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And, we chatted about a week or so ago, and I was particularly excited about this interview because, I have 5 daughters. And so it's an inspiration to me to have Haelee being out there doing what she's doing, writing books at 13 years old. Like that's just so impressive to me. And she is out there sharing her story, which, hey, I want to get into that, but I just got to give you kudos of how amazing that is that you're out there sharing your story, helping other people, other teenagers overcome some hard things that you've dealt with in your life, and you can totally relate to, some of those things. So I want you to just share a little bit about why you wrote the book, what the book's about. Actually, tell me what the book's about. And of course, that relates to why you wrote it. But yeah, I want to turn the time over to you, Haelee, and just kind of give a little summary of the book. Don't give it all away because we want people to buy the book and go read it. But so a little bit about what the book's about and why you wrote it.
So the book is pretty much like about my personal experiences, all while trying to help somebody else overcome their experiences. And it's all about you loving yourself, finding yourself, respecting yourself, etc. Everything that has to do with you in that would reflects you loving yourself. And the reason why I wrote it is because I know that a lot of people my age and older, even younger, struggle with insecurities. And I know that this is something that has been really hard on me for years. And I know that a lot of other people either have it worse than me or possibly around the same amount as me. So I wrote it to hopefully help out other people.
Yeah, that's amazing. And let me just clarify that it's not just people your age or a little bit younger, a little bit older. It's almost everybody has insecurities in life. So this can relate to people even my age and across all ages. They all have insecurities. I still have insecurities sometimes. And even though I'm an achievement coach and I help people overcome their insecurities and limiting beliefs, I still have them. We all have them. But it's great that you're sharing that message and helping people overcome and sharing why it's so important to overcome those insecurities. So I want to get into a little bit of the backstory, a little bit of why you wrote the book, because there were some things that happened to you as a a young girl, and you have an amazing journey to where you are today. And I won't ruin it for the audience, but you've met some amazing people. You've got some letters from some very high influential folks. I want you to share that, of course. Um, some things that you've been able to accomplish. But first, let's go back to the beginning. You were young, and remind me how old you were. You were about 8-ish, right? If I remember right.
Six. It ranged from the ages of 6 to 8.
Okay, 6 to 8. And you had some stuff going on. So what was going on in your life that caused you to be uh, deal with or have these insecurities? Because they're pretty traumatic, and I think that people need to be aware of those things.
So it pretty much started from when I had this best friend of mine. Not gonna disclose her name, but like it all started when I had went over to her house for a birthday party that I think it was for one of her cousins or her friend. I don't exactly remember, but they were like in the living room and I was in her room. We were just playing and reading and stuff like that, doing normal things that 6 to 8 year olds would do.
Right.
So while that was going on, she had tried to touch me inappropriately and I wouldn't let her. So I had walked out of the room and asked my dad if I could leave. And I didn't want to be around her anymore after that. So after that happened, she got upset and she started to bully me. And she's even attempted to kill me 2 or 3 times. And one of the ways that she tried was she choked me, and she also had tried to drown me in the pool. And each time my friend had to help me. Like I was always around a group of friends. I would never go outside by myself. It's not something because I was scared. It was just something that I would never just go outside by myself. So I was in this group filled with big kids and people who were a lot older than me. They were like in 5th grade when I was like in the first, second, and they were like really protective over me. So they would help me out when she would hurt me and things like that and get me away and get me to my dad. So after that had happened, I started to feel like really insecure and like scared to go to school because she would always talk down on me. She would spread rumors. And as I started to get older, I started to make friends with people who were considered pretty and like popular and all of that. I was always best friends with like one of the prettiest people in school. And when I was their best friend, I was considered like the uglier one. And it would always make me feel like I was in their shadow and I felt really insecure about it. I was like, I wasn't envious of them. I was just like wishing that I had that attention too. And I was like, well, if I don't have the same attention as them, then I must be ugly. And if I don't look like this, then I must be ugly. So I had set these like unrealistic standards for myself based on how my other friends had looked. And even they started to pick on me too. And I don't think they came from like a mean standpoint like everybody else has, but they did pick on me for things. Like, for example, I didn't even notice I had a big forehead until somebody pointed it out. I didn't notice that my nose was big until somebody pointed it out. I didn't notice any of these things until people had pointed it out. The only things that I was really ever insecure about, it was more like my personality, like the way that I laughed, the way that I talked, things like that. It was like littler things, but it just got progressively um, worse and started to become more about my physical appearance rather than my emotional and stuff like that. And um, bringing it on to the 6th grade, I was also best friends with this other girl. And she was like my quote unquote best friend, but she would always like talk down to me. I could never get away from the toxic environment. And every time you would try to be like, look, I don't want to talk to you for this amount of time, she would start to be like, well, if you don't do this, I'm gonna do this to myself. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And it would like scare me. So she would always make me feel really insecure. And she would always make me feel like so scared and nervous around her because she would always threaten herself and she would always threaten to do something. So it always made me feel like really reserved. And the only reason why I stayed friends with her was because I didn't want to be alone. And I felt like I would never find another best friend like her. So that was the reason why I felt really insecure around her. Now, not really insecure.
So that's some pretty traumatic stuff, right? Being choked, being almost drowned by your supposed friends. and being told that you have all these things wrong with you is never fun to hear for anybody, right? Especially somebody who's as young as 6 to 8 years old. So, what was the main thing that helped you get through those insecurities? And then I also want to get it. Well, let's talk about that first. So, what was the main thing that helped you get through? And then I want to bring your father on here in a second and have him give a little bit of his perspective, because I know he had to really go to bat for you to to make sure people knew that it wasn't your fault. But what was the main things that really helped you get through those insecurities?
Um, like the first few people were like my parents. My mom, she would always like talk very positively about me. She would never really have anything negative to say about me. So that will always make me feel happy inside. And I wouldn't always show, I'd just be like, thanks. And I would just be like really humble about it and like kind of annoyed because I don't like being talked to like that. I do appreciate the compliment, but I'm just not very good at saying thank you and like accepting compliments. So it will be my mom and my dad because I could like always talk to them about it. And then the other people that were help were like those group of friends that will always help me and defend me against them.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's good that you had that friend that would always help protect you from this bully girl. And
Mhm.
there's bullying is such a big deal, and we need to bring a lot more awareness to it, because a lot of kids get bullied, and it does cause a lot of insecurities. It causes a lot of issues. It causes slipping grades. It causes problems at home. And luckily, it sounds like you had some parents and that really supported you and helped you and motivated you to think outside of what those people were trying to project on you, which is amazing. And I think it's funny that you're always, or you said that, yeah, sometimes I would be like, yeah, whatever, mom, or whatever. But that's what parents do, is they love their kids, they support them, and we say things sometimes that drive our kids crazy. And Dedrick, I know you can relate as a father, that we can say things and they'll just kind of roll their eyes and like whatever, but it really does start to sink in. And and it's, I know my daughters, when they leave for the day, like going to school, or I drop them off when I take them to school, or my oldest daughter when she's going out with friends or whatever, I always tell her, remember who you are, and she just kind of laughs, and her friends kind of uh, giggle a little bit whenever they hear me say it. But my little 7-year-old twin, one of my twins, she'll start saying it now. So whenever anybody, even me, she'll be like, "Dad, remember who you are," and so they're listening, and you obviously were listening to your parents, which is awesome. So um, that's fantastic. And so, Didrik, I want to ask you to kind of tell a little bit of your side of the story, because Hayley's coming to you telling you this stuff is happening, and you obviously, as a concerned parent, you believe her and you can tell there's something wrong, and you're trying to
Mhm.
get that for her. So what happened there?
Without giving away too much of everything, so what Haelee was speaking of was mainly what's in the Rules of a Big Boss, a book of self-love. It's more of a high-level book.
Mm-hmm.
The second book, The Unlikely Journey, goes deeper into what she actually experienced with respect to the bullying and the particular child that we're speaking of. So we were living in Maryland at the time, and it was the irony is that she was actually going to a school that was in the so-called best school system in the state. And it's true, it was the best school system in the state as far as test scores, but that was it. They really didn't care about faculty safety. They didn't care about student safety or anything to that effect. Their only thing was test scores, test scores, test scores, and graduation rate. So at the time when all of this stuff was going on, I went to all of the people in power to tell them about what was going on. I told the principal what was going on at the school. I told the school nurse. I told the assistant principal. I told the school social worker, um, and one other person who I can't remember at the school. the people that are in charge of, special behaviors or whatever. I let everyone at school know. I also told the program directors at the before and after care, because there was a program, after school program in that same school. So everyone at the school knew what was going on or had some semblance of understanding. Unfortunately, I don't know. They didn't believe me, and I have my own reasons why I don't believe that they believed me. I'm not going to get into that. But one reason that I believe that they didn't believe me is simply because of the age of the children. We're talking about a 7-year-old girl and a 6-year-old girl here. And I don't believe that, and I believe that that was a part of the issue where saying, hey, we don't believe this guy. The other issue that I didn't really want to speak of is I believe that race played a factor too, or whatever. But I cannot confirm that nor deny it. But it's just a thought. The third issue that came into play is that both students were honor roll students or whatever. And my daughter's a salient. They had never seen her act out. And they've always saw her as this sweet little girl. But what they didn't know was what that sweet little girl would do when their back was turned. And she was not only tormenting my daughter, she was tormenting other children too. It just so happened that for some reason or the other, Hayley was her principal victim. So I also, once I saw that the school wasn't going to do anything, I took everything to the school board and to the superintendent. Same thing. The Board of Education wasn't willing to step in and do anything about it. And the superintendent wasn't able to do anything about it. One of the things, and they failed us in several areas, because as I'm reporting these different incidents, and I want to say they started as far back as I actually have denoted. They started in March of 2015. But to my memory, everything actually started in December of 2014. I just don't have those exact incidents written down. But anyway, as I would go to them and tell them everything that was going on, one of the things that they should have told me is that there was a reporting portal that you used to report incidents or whatever, bullying, any type of physical assault, sexual assault, and things of that nature. And this documentation was actually reportable up to the state. None of this was in the parent handbook or anything to that effect. It wasn't in any school-based literature. No one knew, except for those in authority. I found it out much later down the road. And when I found out about it, I didn't find out about it until I complained to the state. So after I realized that the local Board of Education wasn't going to do anything about what was going on, I escalated things up to the state. So I spoke with the school safety officer for the entire state of Maryland and let him know what was going on. And he was aghast when I shared with him what was going on with the students. And he was also aghast with the with the failures of the school to tell me this, tell me that, how to process this and process that. He recommended that I file a complaint with juvenile services and whatnot. And I contacted juvenile services, same thing. Juvenile services didn't do anything about what was going on. And I also contacted social services, same thing. Social services didn't do anything. And one of the things that I told social services is that, the things that this little girl is saying about my daughter are things that you would hear a child that's 10 years older say. These are things that you would see a child that's 10 years older doing. So she is saying that my daughter is spreading rumors about my daughter, not just saying, oh, her feet stink and stuff like that. No. These were adult rumors saying things that my daughter was a WHORE, that she practiced fellatio and things of that nature. They were adult type rumors. As I said, she was sexually assaulted at least 3 times that I know of. And when I told social services about it, I said, for a child to be this young, exhibiting these types of behaviors, she has to be being abused in her home in some type of way. You guys need to go out and do an investigation or something to that effect. These are the days that these things occurred, and so on and so forth. And this child has attempted to murder my child on multiple occasions. She has to be being either sexually abused in her home or physically abused in some type of way. I don't know what it is, but you guys need to come out here and investigate. Again, every system of record that could have helped us failed us. So in time, Haelee begins to develop school phobia. She's afraid to go to school because she doesn't have any trust in the authorities at school. She develops agoraphobia because she's afraid to go outside because her assailant lives 4 houses down from us. And she's getting depressed and she's seeing all of the stress that all of this is causing upon me, and just nothing could be done. It's like we were living a nightmare. We told our community association knew what was going on with the kids, and again, no one would do anything. So finally, things reached the head when in September of 2016, I believe. Yes, September 2016. I It was the holiday. We were outside having a cookout, and my daughter went outside to play, and her assailant jumped on her again, and she beat her down like a dog. Hayley came back to the house, and she was limping, and she wouldn't tell me what was going on. I didn't understand. I thought that maybe she just fell and got hurt or something to that effect. And we woke up the next morning. I'm sorry. We went home that evening, and when we went home that evening, she confided in me what happened. And I said, I've had enough at this point. I've called my mom, and I said, Mom, what can I do, or what do we do at this point? I am at my wit's end. I've done everything that I know how to do, and so on and so forth. So my mom said she is going to have to defend herself, and she's going to fight back. Parents, if your children are being bullied, don't ever do that. I am going to say it again. Do not ever promote your children to fight back, and I'm about to share with you why. So I told my mom, okay, and I said, Hayley, I've done everything that I could to protect you. Daddy's not going to always be here. At some point or the other, you are going to have to defend yourself, and you are going to have to fight back and stop letting this girl beat you up. And she said, okay, but I'm scared. And I said, Hayley, you know how to fight. I've taught you how to fight. You just have to be willing to do it. So I said, the next time she puts her hands on you, take the gloves off. You're bigger than her. Beat her up. She said, I'm scared. I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to hurt her. And I said, she's not going to hurt you. And trust me, if you fight her the way I've shown you how to fight before, you are going to win. And I told her, when you decide you're ready, come get me. I'll stand outside and I'll watch just to make sure it doesn't go too far. Biggest mistake I ever made. Very next day, that very next day, I sent Hayley out to the car, and this child was sitting on our steps. And Hayley couldn't get out the house without walking past the other child, her assailant. So her assailant turns around, she sticks her middle finger up at her, she pokes her tongue out at her and everything. She sees that I'm standing there the whole time, and she just continues to antagonize Hayley. I said, Hayley, just ignore her, just go get what I asked you to get and, move along. Well, the little girl decides once Hayley walks past her, she puts her hands on her again, and she hurts her. Well, Hayley was already hurt, and I'm sorry, let me back up for a minute. Once Hayley told me what happened to her, I held her in my arms that night, and I cried myself she cried herself to sleep, and I sat there and cried too. I was in a state of anxiety, and I felt like I failed her. I felt like I failed her as a parent. I felt like I failed her as a man. I felt like I failed her as a dad. And I was like, my job is to protect her, and I felt like I failed her because, I should not have sent her outside. All these thoughts were going through my head. Maybe I should have raised her to be a tomboy instead of just letting her be a girl. Maybe I should have made her more aggressive and things of that nature. And all these thoughts are going through my head, and I cried. She went to sleep. I didn't. I stayed awake that entire night. Okay, now I'm going back forward. So she put her hands on her again. And mind you, she was already hurt the day prior, and it's still hurt. Now she's hurt again. I said, Hayley, you got to fight her back. Okay. Hayley says, okay. And I come out the house. And when I came out the house, I told all the other children to go in the house. Why? Just go in the house. I don't want y'all to see what's getting ready to happen. So I told Hayley, take the gloves off, fight her. So Hayley fought her, beat the little girl up. And after she beat her up, Hayley and I high-fived, and I said, how did it feel? She said, great. She felt good. She felt a sense of release and everything. And I was like, I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself, and so on and so forth. Well, fast forward about 2 or 3 hours later, there's a knock at my door, and the sheriff is at my door. The sheriff is at my door. He wants to take a statement about what happened, what occurred, and what's going on, and so on and so forth. He let me know he already talked to the other little girl and their family. He talked to our next door neighbors and got a statement from them, and he was getting the concluded statement from us. So I told the sheriff, yes, what they told you is correct, but what they left out is this part. My daughter's being bullied by this other by her assailant for over a year. She has put her hands on her multiple times. I have a log of every single incident that has transpired with a date, witnesses, and so on and so forth. And, at this point, enough is enough. He asked me, could he have a copy of that log? And I said, you sure can. So I gave him a copy of the log and everything, and he put it in the report and so on and so forth. Well, later on, about 2 or 3 days later, I get I don't know if it's called a summons or a subpoena or what, but I had a note on the door from my sheriff. From the sheriff, and it told me that I was being charged with second-degree assault on a minor. What? How am I being charged with second-degree assault on a minor when I didn't touch this child? I didn't do a thing. All I did was sit there and watch everything transpire. So with second-degree assault on a minor, I'm looking at either a $5,000 fine or either a $5,000 fine or 10 years in prison or both. Mind you, I have a clean criminal record, squeaky clean. Have a security clearance, former military, worked for the government and everything. So my background is squeaky clean. Didn't even have as much as a speeding ticket. And I am being criminalized and vilified for simply telling my daughter to go out and protect herself.
Right.
And
you were sorry, I just want to jump in here real quick, because everything that you're saying is just a good parent trying to protect their child.
Absolutely.
And to look out for her best interests. And so, yeah, no, it's, I honestly can't believe that the sheriff department was actually trying to go down that route. So
absolutely. And so what ended up happening was I ended up having to hire a high profile attorney, the highest profile attorney in the state, to defend my daughter and I. And we were able to beat the charges or whatever. Initially, the state prosecutor was just going down the path of throwing the book at me. He was going for the 10 years in prison plus the $5,000 fine, which I would have ended up, of course, losing custody of Hayley, and my entire life would have been thrown away simply for me telling my daughter to protect herself. But we, as I said, I hired a great criminal defense attorney, and we beat the charges. But I'm not going to give everything away. Just a lot of this is in the book. But after everything was going down and as everything was going on, I said, this is really ridiculous. I said, I am going to escalate things more now, because at this point, every system has failed us, and I am being criminalized with this, where the system failed us. None of this should have happened. If the police or juvenile services would have done what they were supposed to do, I wouldn't be here right now. So at this point, I said, okay, I'm going to go up higher. I'm going to go all the way to the top. So I wrote letters to the Department of Justice. I wrote to the Federal Department of Justice. I wrote a letter to President Obama. I wrote a letter to our congressman, Donna Edwards, and Elijah Cummings. Also wrote a letter to the county executive at that time. The county executive is essentially equivalent to the mayor, Alan Kittleman at the time, and also wrote a letter to Governor Larry Hogan in Maryland, and letting him know everything that was going on, everything that was transpired, and, just giving them all of the facts and telling them, this is how the school system failed us, and so on and so forth, letting them know, hey, my daughter's living in fear now. She's suicidal, and, none of this should be happening, particularly with a 7-year-old. Please help me. No one else is willing to help me. and her, please help. President Obama, Elijah Cummings and Donna Edwards said that they would look into it. President Obama went a step further than them, and he said, I'm not going to look into it. I'm going to do something. So he wrote us back. We have I have a copy of that letter. A copy of that letter is actually in the book. Um, he wrote us back and said, how much he cared about anti-bullying, the anti-bullying programs, child anti-bullying programs, and said, no child should have to go through anything like this. And he sent a letter. He transmitted our letter to the U.S. Department of Education and insisted that they do an investigation on what was going on and reach out to us. So I received a letter from the U.S. Department of Education, which is also in the book. And they said, we received your letter from President Obama and so on and so forth. We're most concerned about this. It falls under the Office of Civil Rights. And, these are the types of issues that the Office of Civil Rights handle and so on and so forth. And these are the effects of those things. And we are going to investigate these matters. Please get in contact with us at this number and so on and so forth. So I consulted with the U.S. Department of Education, the program managers and attorneys and everything about everything that transpired in the failures of the school systems and everything. And the entire school system of Howard County, plus that particular school, were put under federal investigation for what they allowed to happen to Hayley. And, and with all of this going on, I said, there's just too much trauma. Too much trauma has happened in Maryland. And now that I have had this investigation opened, we're talking about the school system potentially losing federal funding. My mom said, you and Hayley have now become a target. At this point, if you are going to you're going to have to let her come stay with me and spend at least one school year with me until all of this blows over. And then once it blows over, you can come back and get them. I told my mom I couldn't do that. I had enough wisdom and foresight to know that my doing that would feel like abandonment to her. And she was in a tender mental state at the time. And I said, she would be blaming herself, and she's already blaming herself in seeing how much this has done to us in our what was once a peaceful life. I can't do that to her. I will have to move too. So her and I ended up moving away from Maryland and moving to North Carolina together. And would you believe that because I made the decision to move away once again and to protect my daughter, once again, I got vilified. This is in the book, Fire and Gold. I'm not going to get into that. You have to read the book to find out how I was vilified for simply making the decision to once again protect my daughter and protect myself.
Yeah. So, Hayley, I want to kind of come back to you and ask you, how did this all make you feel that your dad was going to such great lengths to make sure the truth was known of what you had gone through?
At the time, I kind of felt like it was like my fault. And like my dad said, like I was like self-blaming myself. I still tend to do that. I do that a lot. But at that time, it was like very prominent. And I was always like, well, maybe if I just ended it all, then maybe everything would just blow over and I could just be forgotten about. And this entire situation would just be forgotten about and everything would be fine and nobody would have to deal with it anymore. Of course, I didn't do it, obviously. But
And to clarify, when you say to end it all, you're talking about taking your life. Is that?
yes.
Yeah.
And and me thinking that way, it caused a lot more emotional and mental damage than it would have if I didn't feel that way. So I was like self-blaming myself. And then I also felt like kind of like special. I was like, Barack Obama, like I was like, I got attention from the president. And I was like wanting to brag about it, which of course I did. I did brag about it. And
Sure.
because like I was a big fan of Michelle Obama. So I was like, her husband did this, her husband did that. And my friends were super jealous. So I was happy in that area. But at the same time, I was like really sad and hurt about the entire situation.
Yeah. So I just want to acknowledge that I am so grateful you did not end up taking your life. And, as I've, I've had a number of discussions in the last in the last week or so. And actually, right before I got on to do this interview, I was having a discussion with another gentleman who was doing a lot with in the arena of teen suicide and suicide in general. And with it being, 2020 and the COVID pandemic and everything, suicides have increased in the United States by 16%. And it's a big, big problem. And so I just wanted to highlight that a little bit. And the fact that you're helping to combat that is amazing. And 13 years old and out there helping young women or teenagers in general to realize that their self-worth, that they are worth, being alive, they are worth being happy, they're worth having joy. And so I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you for everything that you're doing. But now I want to kind of get into a little bit or shift gears a little bit because unless you have any comments about that, either you or your father, actually, if there's anything either one of you would want to say there.
No, please, you said it all. Please continue.
Okay. I always want to make sure that you guys are getting your voice if you want to say something. But so you go through all this. Your dad goes to the top level of government for you, so that you and him, so that you guys can get your story out and make sure that people understand that this isn't your fault. That you got into a fight, but it wasn't your fault, that you had gone through this whole thing and you win, obviously. But what made you want to write this book? And Hayley, was it your idea? Was it your father's idea? Was it a combination of the two of you? What happened there? What prompted the book?
Well, let me take that question.
Okay.
So I had always for years told myself that eventually I'm going to write a book. And I've been through a lot in life. And, I came from a single parent home. And coming from a single parent home as a young child, I had a lot of anger, resentment, and hurt inside of me. And at the time, I did not realize that, in the future, my pain would be for good. I didn't believe that God loved me and that God just wanted me to suffer. So I was a very unhappy child, teenager, and young adult as a result of this. And, I didn't never feel loved. I didn't like myself. And despite me not feeling loved, I wasn't suicidal or anything like that. I was just someone that had a dark cloud over their head. And I had more anger in me than anything. And it was largely because I didn't know my truth and I didn't know my story. Fast forward much later in life, I realized, there was a purpose to my pain because I was going to eventually have a child that was going to need me. And that child was going to need me to be more than a dad. That child was going to need me to be a parent. So in being a parent, sometimes I'll be the dad, other times I'll have to be the mom. And sometimes I'll get to wear pants, other times I'll need to wear a dress. And what happened was I understood my child's pain when she was 2-3 years old, and she was crying out, begging for a dad. And, and that she needed me. And I said, okay, I get it. I understand. I will do what I can to bring her home, and I will figure out how to raise her. And this was tough because I didn't know how to raise anyone. I didn't know how to take care of anyone. I've been taking care of my entire life. The only person I knew how to take care of was myself. And that's the way my grandmother and mother raised me, to take care of myself. But what I realized in time was that, now that I have this child, I have to be able to take care of someone else, and I have to be full time in those duties. And in order to take care of her, I have to remember how my mother and grandmother took care of me. And I have to be understanding of her pain. I was understanding of her pain because I lived it, not having a dad. And I said that no child of mine will have to live through that pain that I had. And so I said, I will step up and I will save her. I'm not going to sit back and watch this child suffer. So I got custody of her in June of 2010. So it was about 2 weeks before Father's Day, when I was awarded permanent custody of her. And it was the happiest time of my life, but it was the biggest struggle because I didn't know what to do. But anywho, to figure out what to do, all I had to do was remember all of the things that my mom did, all of the things my grandmother did, like learning how to do her hair. I didn't know how to do that. Having to play with dolls and tea parties. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. And I was like, but I had to remember, your grandma always figured out a way to connect with you. You have to figure it out in your own way. And I was able to figure it out, and I figured it out successfully. And I realized that, in time, that this was my purpose all along. And my purpose all along was that God was planning things out. You are going to be a single father at some point in the future. For you to be able to walk in these shoes that I'm going to give you in the future, I need you to suffer. Without suffering, you will not know what to do. So all along during my paths of struggle, with happiness and being fatherless, God was planting seeds in me. Don't let another child suffer like you have. So my plan was that I was going to write a book about about my experiences growing up and whatnot. And I said, Hayley is going to be and I told myself that Hayley would be the co-author for that book. But I was going to wait until she was at least 16, 18, because I wanted her to be mature enough to be able to handle a lot of the things that I'm going to share with her in the book. And my actual plan was I would tell her the stories and she would be the ghostwriter. Like she would actually write the book while I told the stories or whatever. So, and then also too, I was like, the things I'm going to share, it's like a kid can't handle this and process these emotions. She has to be an adult. So I told myself, maybe when she's 18, 16, 18, 22, I will tell her the full backstory and then let her see how her life connects with mine. Yeah. And, my purpose in telling the story was to empower other single parents saying, hey, you got this, you can do this, don't worry about what that child doesn't have. That child may need to suffer a little bit because you don't know the future that God has planned for that child. Look at how things worked out for us. I suffered so that my daughter could be blessed. Looking back on everything, I praise God for all of the suffrage that I went through because I was able to save my child from suffering. And, I would do it again and again and again. I would do it 10 times over if I could. But anyway, so that was the initial plan. But in October, we were sitting down talking to my mom, and my mom said, and it was actually the weekend of Hayley's birthday, which was October 18th. My mom said that one of the things that while she loved Hayley's book, she wished that she would have went a little bit further in telling about her experiences, like when President Obama got involved and things of that nature. And I said, I told her not to go that far. I didn't want her to go that deep because that's a story for another day. And I told my mom, that's a story that I want to share in our full autobiography as she gets older and more mature. And my mom said, why wait until then? Why not tell it now and just don't tell the full story, do a micro autobiography. And I said, what do you mean? She said, start writing the autobiography around the time when everything started. And, you can start from there. And if that book does well, then you could go ahead and you could tell the full autobiography a few years later. And I said, okay, let me think about it. So I came home we came home after Hayley's birthday, and I thought about it and I said, you know what, she's right. I think Hayley is mature enough to where she could at least handle this part. I mean, she's already shown that. I mean, through her interviews and just writing of her story and sharing of her pain. So I said, okay, you know what, let's go ahead and do it. So what we'll do is we will do a 7-year autobiography, basically that picks up where her book left off, and we will go from that point forward. So that was the impetus behind it, saying there's more to the story that's in the rules of a big boss. And once this is all shared, it will let you know the links that a father will go through, the links that a parent will go through to show their love for their child. And and also look at how this parent was vilified, but because by the grace of God, he kept being saved over and over and over again. His child was saved over and over and over again. Almost lost my freedom, almost lost my career, almost lost custody of my daughter. But each time, God came in and stepped in with a save. So it's just to basically tell people, there's always light in darkness, and it's going to be okay. So it was to dive deeper and to tell Hayley's story from my perspective.
Awesome. So cool. So, so Hayley, tell me, what does the title Rules of a Big Boss mean? So it's a story about self-love, right? So how does that relate to being the big boss?
First, I would like to talk about where I got the big boss from. I was just on this person's live, and she known to give people advice and have these little girl talks in her live. And I was like, that would be a great title for a book, because at that time I was thinking about writing a book, and I was like, sounds like it would be a good name. And I was discovering a name for it just in case I would ever write one. And the rules part that came out of Amber Rose's How to Be a Bad, not can't say the word, but in her book, she had this list of rules that you needed to master in order to be a bad, can't say the word. And I was like, and so I combined it together, the rules of a big boss. And I was like, I kind of did something there. And it pertains to self-love, because a big boss, in my definition, is someone who loves himself and someone who radiates confidence, and someone who I would quote unquote stan. I don't know if you know what stan means, where you almost idolize someone, but not really. You would look up to that person. And you would find as what people my age would say, she radiates queen energy, or I love her, and this that, and things like that. They will always describe her in such a high way. And that, in my definition, that is what a big boss is. So that's how I say pertains to self-love.
Awesome. And so I definitely can see the big boss inside of you for sure. And so inside the book, do you outline what the rules of a big boss are? Can you share your top one rule of being a big boss are?
My top one rule, it would probably be knowing how to stay true to yourself. That is the baseline of literally everything. Even though that's not the first rule, that is something that is the most important out of all of them. Because if you don't stay true to yourself, how are you going to be able to respect yourself? How are you going to be able to respect other people? If you don't know who you are and you don't stay true to it, how are you going to know all of this other stuff? How are you going to love yourself? It doesn't make sense. When you're around other people, if you're not yourself, how can you know how to respond to certain situations? So that's the most important thing that I would say, in being a big boss.
Awesome. Hey, Dedrick, are you sure she's only 13? Because her insights at 13 are absolutely amazing. That blows me away that she gets that.
Adam, it's funny that you say that, because you don't see us in our whole life. But in our whole life, I'm immature, where she's more mature than I am. I'm the silly one. Actually, we're both silly, but I'm way sillier than she is. And she's a better orator than me. And I believe she might be more wiser than I am. And yeah, she is absolutely 13. I have the birth certificate to prove it. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, yeah, you should be the parent and not me because I'm so super silly and immature.
It blows me away, Hayley, that you have such amazing insight for a 13-year-old, and what you just said about being true to yourself is is spot on. I mean, really, that is such a key factor into everything. Having that self love, that true to yourself, knowing who you are and who you want to become in the future, and you're definitely mature. You're beyond your years for sure. Uh, it's just it blows me away. Like the fact that you're 13 and you're out there saying these things is just amazing, so inspiring. Uh, my daughters are going to absolutely love this interview. I'm going to make sure that they listen to it, and we're going to get a copy of the book for sure so that they can. So I'm a big reader, so I love to read, and it's just awesome. So Hayley,
Another thing to say
right.
that I haven't really talked about in my book. Another way to like better yourself and like make yourself feel more confident is like have this vision in your mind of like who you want to be. I'm not saying change yourself completely, but like that person that you want to like be, but you're like kind of like shy about it. Have that in your mind all the time. Like I would like to call this like my higher self, and where like I would like have this envision of someone, I would be like, wow, I love her. And then I would like try to radiate that energy every single day. And I would try to be that exact person. And it has worked. So if there's like a way that you want to be, like you want to react a certain type of way, like you don't want to be as negative. Imagine yourself being positive. You don't want to be like really reserved. Imagine yourself that you're not. So like I'm not like, as I said, don't change yourself completely, because if you can't do it, you can't do it. But if you can and you're comfortable with it, do it. But go ahead.
No, that's beautiful, and having that self awareness of setting that intention is powerful. That's how I refer to it, is setting that intention of where you want to go with your life, what you want to be, who you want to emulate to other people. And again, you're beyond your years as far as that perception is just amazing. So uh, I honestly believe that if all 13-year-olds had that ability to understand that, like we would have a lot less problems in the world, because your generation would just be out there changing the world left and right. I mean, you're doing amazing things, and it's just awesome. So, um, yeah, it blows me away that you have that perspective already. So, where can I ask you where you have kind of picked these things up? Is it your parents? Is it reading books? Is it listening to stuff on YouTube? A 13-year-old, I'm sure, picks it up from all over the place. But what's kind of the main place that you've learned these types of things from? Because most 13-year-olds don't go around talking like you just did. They really don't.
um, as far as like higher self goes, I got that from a quote. I don't exactly remember the quote, but I do remember like something, it went something like this, like imagine yourself as this better you and start showing up as her. It sounded something like that. But as far as everything else that I said, that completely came from me. I didn't learn it from anyone. Um,
Awesome.
like I just learned that from analyzing situations, because I will overanalyze every single detail and pay attention to every single detail. Every mistake I would make, I will look back on it and I would just think about it and think about it and think about it. Then I would think about all the other mistakes and then put it together, and I'd be like, oh, okay, so this is what I get out of it. And that is how I get every single thing out of every single situation, whether it's a positive or negative situation. I will always analyze it, and I would always pick it apart and find the good out of it. And that is how I got everything that I know now.
And if I could pick up off of that, I have some idea where she got it from. It's more spiritual than anything. It's more spiritual than figurative. They always say that when a loved one passes away, they leave pieces of themselves behind.
Hmm.
Well, my grandmother was the salt of the earth. Oh man, she was a walking angel. And my grandmother was my best friend. She was my everything. She was my mom, my best friend, my spiritual advisor, my confidant, and all that. Anything you could think of, my grandma fit the bill. Well, she passed away in November of 2010. And when she passed away, I was devastated. I was like, God, you've taken everything away from me. The only thing that I have left is my daughter at this point. And one of the things, the one thing that my grandmother did that got on my nerves was that she had the biggest heart. I mean, she would give the shirt off of her back to someone that didn't deserve it. And I would always find myself frustrated with her saying, Granny, why? Lo and behold, it took time, but I developed her heart. And I'm like, now I'm the same way. Find myself giving to people who don't deserve it or who didn't earn it or whatever, giving to people who have done me wrong. And I was like, I really shouldn't help you because you did this, that, and the third to me, but I just can't help myself. I had this big bleeding heart that I inherited from my grandmother and so on and so forth. Well, my grandmother left two things behind for Hayley. She left me the heart, and she left Hayley her wisdom, and she left Hayley her eyes. When Hayley was first born, she just had her eyes and my mother's eyes. I don't remember which ones they were. But sometime after the time when my grandmother passed away, I asked God in tears, who's going to take care of me? Who's going to love me like my grandmother? Who's going to love me unconditionally and so on and so forth? And God said, you already know the answer. It was my daughter. So one day I was looking at pictures of my grandma, just flipping through them, crying. And I looked over at Hayley, and at this time she's a baby, she's just playing. And I said, hey man, my eyes seeing things. So I went and grabbed her, and I looked at the picture, and I looked at Hayley, and I looked at the picture, and I said, oh my God, I've never seen this before. Hayley has Granny's eyes. So I mean, not eyebrows, but her eyes. And I said, oh my God, did she always have them and I just never saw them? Or, did I have my Damascus Road moment where the fish scales fell from my eyes and now I'm seeing what was always there? Or is this just a gift that God gave me and passed it along? So I said, it's easy for me to raise Hayley and take care of her, or got easier for me at that point because this basically became you're raising a smaller version of your grandmother. So the same way your granny took care of you, now it's your turn to do the same. So you're really not taking care of just your child, you're taking care of your grandmother's spirit. So as far as where did Hayley's wisdom came from, is because she inherited my grandmother's spirit.
Awesome. And one thing that I have noticed as I've chatted with the two of you is just the love that you guys have for each other. And it definitely comes through, especially after what you just said, Dedrick, is, the love that you have for your daughter, but you could tell she has an amazing love for you as well. And I think she has an amazing love for the world in general, but you guys definitely are so close, and it shows through. It's just amazing. So, Hayley, I want to ask you a few more questions, and then we'll wrap this up with my final question at the very end that I always like to ask. And I'll ask each of you, both of you, the question because I want to get both your perspectives. But what does the future hold for Haelee Moone? So you've got some books out. And by the way, she's also created some. Remind me what they are, Hayley, but some drawing, some coloring pages that you had someone help you develop that you're offering and giving out just because you wanted to help people through this pandemic. And you can certainly fill me in on that. But
I also sell autograph books. I sell mugs, t-shirts, tote bags, and there's something else. Blankets. And pretty much just accessories in general and clothes.
awesome. So what does the future hold for Haelee Moone? So, do you see yourself writing more books in the future? Do you see yourself up on stage being a motivational speaker? What do you vision for yourself? What is your future going to be?
Okay, so this is something I love to be asked because I love talking about myself. So what I'm going to say is like I have different plans for different age groups. I don't like to put limits on myself, but I have one. So like as I get older, I want to get more into like modeling for like big magazines. And when I'm like in college, I want to continue writing books, but I'm gonna try to wait until after college when I'm actually working. And I'm gonna continue writing books, but I'm also gonna get into modeling and like get into runway and being on magazines, stuff like that. And then as I'm putting myself through law school and going through law school, I'm going to become a lawyer and then a judge. And then I'm going to have my own law firm. And hopefully, I will also have my own like clothing line.
Wow.
I
So,
also want to have a jet.
If you don't mind me piggybacking off of that question, Adam, she left something off.
okay.
So she said she plans to write more books. So she actually, so with the coloring pages, her plan was initially to develop a coloring book, a coloring and activity book, and she was going to sell that as a supplement to the Rules of a Big Boss, a book of self-love. But because of the pandemic, unemployment being high and everything, she decided, you know what, I'm going to scrap the idea of the coloring book, and I'm just going to get a coloring page and activity pages away for free. So each month on her blog, she gives away one or two of the drawings or whatever, and says, print them out, color them, post them up on your social media, and tag me back in them. And she's been doing that. She started doing that, I believe, in November. And it's just a simple way of giving back and trying to help give back free self-esteem lessons and things of that nature. So that's another project. Another project that she has coming up is that she has actually decided that she's going to skim her rules down of a big boss, and she's going to make them smaller for younger kids. So for preschool age kids
Yeah.
and preschool age kids, basically preschool and elementary school age kids. And this one is actually going to be called The Rules of a Little Boss. And we're working with a cartoonist now to develop the cartoons that fall in accordance with that book. And we're planning on releasing that book probably she plans on releasing that book in the sometime around summer. And what we did, or what I did for her, is I said, everything should fall under your umbrella. So one thing that you will have is you will have a great resume going into college. You will be able to get into any college you want, because what you've done is by that time you would have at least written 3 or 4 books. You would have, written and published 3 or 4 books. You would have been out on the road doing motivational speaking. You would have been featured on all of the major news networks, ABC, Fox, CBS, and so on and so forth. And then what's happening is we've established a company for you. That company is registered with the state. It's called the Rules of a Big Boss LLC. And your next series of books, actually, instead of being self-published, they actually are falling under the umbrella of your company name. So they're actually being published by the Rules of a Big Boss LLC. So now not only do you have a clothing and accessory company, you also have a publishing company too.
Wow.
So those are things that are what's next for her, all before she turns 18 years old.
Amazing. That is blows me away that you're such a entrepreneur at such a young age. And yeah, when you were describing the things that you want to do, I absolutely see that in your future, Haelee, because I don't believe that anything's going to stop you from reaching your goals. So, and you have a father who's very supportive of you, who's going to help you along the way and might push you a little bit, but he's doing it for your best interest. So that is just amazing. And so before we wrap up with the last question, I just want people to know where they can connect with you, Haelee, where they can get a copy of your book, The Rules of a Big Boss, a book of self-love. Where can they find that? Where can they get a copy so that they can go and check that out for themselves?
So you can get my book either on Amazon.com or you can get it on my website, which is thebookofselflove.com. Or if you want to like get it in person or get it from a Black owned business, you can get it from Shelves or you can get it from Book Mecca. And as far as in person, you can get it from a hair salon in Raleigh called Styles Plus.
Awesome. So I will make sure those links are in the description of this episode so that people can just click on that and go order their copy today. And I want to end, I always like to end the show by asking this question. I want to ask Dedrick first, and then I want to end with Haelee because I want to really end the show with her perspective. But if there was one thing, one to maybe three things that you would say someone needs to unleash their greatness within themselves, what would that be?
To unleash their greatness, forgive themselves and forgive people that hurt them. Let go of the past, but take the lesson from the past. When you take the lesson from the past, carry it forward, press forward, and always press forward towards I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. I'm going to be stronger than I was yesterday. And don't ever be afraid to use your voice, particularly where you've been wronged. Don't hold things in, but also practice some tact when you're speaking out. And by letting go of those things that hurt you, they actually become your strength. And, holding in unforgiveness actually does more harm to you than you realize. So always be willing to let go, move forward, but don't ever move forward until you find out what the lesson was from that experience.
Beautiful. Yeah, well said. I loved your points and your perspective on all of that. It's awesome. And thank you for sharing that, Dedrick. And so, Haelee, what are your 1 to 3 points that you would say someone needs to unleash the greatness within themselves?
Okay, so the first one that I would like to say I think is like super important. So it's like let doors close. And what I mean by that is like your past and like let's say that you have this one friend that you has been with you through every single thing that you can imagine. Like they were your ride or die. Imagine something happens between you and you have to let them go. Don't hold on to the memories and keep chasing those good memories because in reality, you're just chasing air. You're not chasing anything. All of that is just a memory. It doesn't actually exist and it might never happen again. So don't chase it. And if you have to let something go, let it go. Don't hold on to it because of what was there. Let it go because of what is there now. So if you need to let go of something, let it go. Don't keep thinking about it, thinking about it, and thinking about it, and think about it because that's just going to put a strain on you and that's going to hinder your growth. And this is something that has also happened to me recently. I had to let go of so many friends. And it wasn't necessarily because they were bad friends. It was just because I needed to. And like all the things that I needed in my life, like I wanted to like make my business grow even more. I wanted to make more money off of it. But in order to be able to get that, I had to let go of things that were hindering my growth and wouldn't allow me to grow. And in order to become like nicer, because I'm told that I'm really mean because of my honesty. So in order to like be able to block that out and like censor myself in certain situations, I needed to let go of things that were toxic to me. So another thing is also something that my dad said is forgive yourself. Because if you don't forgive yourself, how can you expect others to forgive you? Forgive yourself as you would forgive someone else. Because I'm sure, and no matter what somebody else would do, you would always forgive them. So you always have to forgive yourself too. This is what called like self-compassion. Like have compassion for yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, especially when you know that you wouldn't be as hard on someone else. And for the last thing I would say is just take time to yourself. Like you don't always need to be around other people. I do this a lot, which I just did recently. Another thing that you can do to like take time for yourself is put your notifications on mute where you don't hear anything, mute your messages if you can, delete social apps, do things that will like kind of block you out from the world. And this will give you time to reflect, and it'll also give you time to better yourself without having to be around other people and better yourself around other people, which will make things a lot more difficult and you will get sidetracked.
I'm blown away. Like your knowledge is beyond your years for sure. So that was amazing and absolutely, spot on. In order to move forward, we got to leave some stuff behind, get away from the toxic things, and just make sure to love yourself and forgive yourself. Yeah, beautiful message. I'm still blown away that you're only 13. So, that was fantastic. And I, for one, just want to share my appreciation to both of you, both Haelee and Dedrick, for coming on the show, sharing your perspective, sharing your story. Haelee, it's amazing for 13-year-olds or a 13-year-old. It cannot be that or be an easy thing to go on people's shows and share what you went through. So that's just amazing to me that you're willing to do that and to put yourself out there so that you can help other people overcome their insecurities and find self-love. So thank you both for being on. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to get you guys or see what you guys do in the future, especially you, Haelee. I honestly can't wait to see what you are able to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years at least and beyond that. So any parting words before we wrap up?
I just want to thank you for having us and giving us the opportunity to share our voices with additional people. At the end of the day, I just want to help someone. And what I've realized in life is that everything isn't for me. This is all about Hayley. And I have helped her, and through her, I have helped her, and she is helping others. And it feels good to know that I have developed a legacy. And I hope that at the end of the day, when I'm long and dead, they say he left a good legacy behind us because through his door, he and his daughter helped thousands and millions of people. And I appreciate you playing a part in that and allowing us to further spread her voice, my voice, our voice.
Awesome. It's my pleasure. So everybody who's listening, make sure to go get a copy of Rules of a Big Boss, Story of Self-Love. And the other book, the autobiography that comes out is An Unlikely Journey, Fire and Gold. And it's coming out in February. And so I will put links to where you can buy those books below this episode. Go and support Haelee and her message and help her spread her message of self-love and resilience, really, of never giving up and always doing what is true to you. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate your guys' time. And Haelee, you're meant for great things. I know I can see it for sure. So everybody have an amazing day and go out there and unleash your greatness and become the person you're meant to be.